Today we're going to be working on this Consew industrial machine, and it needs a lot of adjustments. 7 whole adjustments are going to have to be done on this machine. Let's get started. Today we have a Consew, and this is an industrial sewing machine, and I've brought it to the bench. We're going to be looking at this one. It's a Consew 226R, I believe, -1 maybe. Very similar to the Juki LU562 and LU563. I think this is more like the 62 because it's got a smaller bobbin in there, or at least it looks smaller to me. So we are going to be following along with our procedure here, this manual for the machine to do the adjustments. There are a lot of adjustments to do on this machine. There is a lot wrong with this Consew, and before we get started, I'm going to take you on a tour to show you all the things that I can just see just by looking at it first off. So let's take a look. You know, you buy one of these, you get a really good deal on them. You can find them on Facebook Marketplace or other places really cheap. But sometimes they're really cheap for a reason, because somebody has fiddled with it so much and now it just won't work right. So that could be the case of this machine. I'm not sure. I haven't tried sewing with it. But here are just a few things that I've noticed. The person that dropped it off said that they replaced the tension assembly, and it actually looks all right. The tension assembly I think is okay. But they couldn't get it to feed right. And if you've ever worked on one of these machines, let's turn this and see how we're looking. We are missing parts. So we're actually missing the walking foot. So that middle post there should be a walking foot that is feeding your fabric through. That's missing. And then something else I noticed is when you want to set your stitch length, there's this marked sleeve here, and it's installed backwards. So the numbers are backwards and they don't correlate with feed stitch lengths. That needs to be fixed, so we got to pull all this stuff off the end and put it back on. So those are just a couple of things that I noticed. Maybe you can see something else that I haven't seen yet, but we know we've at least got that. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to show was the walking, feed dogs down here are way too high. Let's see if we can get a good angle on that. They are just sticking up way too high. So a couple adjustments need to be made. There's also an adjustment in here that needs to be made. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, so you probably have seen this, but the owner of this machine had purchased a bunch of parts for it and also replaced some parts, so we have a lot of parts. Do we have the walking foot? Let's see. There's one. There's another. There's another. Well, without any further ado, let's get to the teardown. Alright, one thing I'm seeing here is this right here. This little thread guide that goes above our needle is not on there, so we're missing a screw right there in the top. Should be a separate screw holding that in. We're going to try and keep a running list of everything that's wrong on this machine. So if you look on the end of this machine, you've got this little thing for mounting something, and this is something that looks like it's a custom machine part. But what that is you can get a positioner for one of these old industrial machines, and it makes it like work like a brand new computerized machine, in that the positioner tells the motor that you're using to drive the machine, and then a lot of times they'll use the servo motors. But it'll tell that what position the needle's at, because it reads the position of this upper shaft here, and it can adjust the motor to make your needle go up or down, or finish on an up or down stroke which is pretty awesome for, okay, I don't think we needed to take that one off, but that's all right. So it's pretty awesome if you're doing really precise work. In fact, you could put one of these where it counts the stitches. You can put a computer on there to count the stitches for you. But this is definitely outside of my normal wheelhouse. I like to work on home machines, but I do, if somebody brings me an industrial, I will work on it. It's just not something that I work on all the time. All right, so I want this to come off. I didn't change my shirt halfway through this video. You did. But you can find one of these at sewingmachinerepairguy.com. Okay, that was a little difficult, but we got it off. This thing did not want to come off. It took a lot of mechanical agitation, and we did all that to do that. Because somebody took this all apart one day and then put it all together wrong. So we're fixing that part. That's the whole reason we took this off. Now I want to clean this whole shaft area, clean in there, put it back together. So as I'm looking at this, I can see kind of why it got stuck on there. This thing has, the machine has gotten stuck and the hand wheel kept going around and it's made a groove in this. Let's see if we can, at some point the machine got stuck in something in the fabric, and as you can see, these set screws that hold that hand wheel on were turning around this part. There's supposed to be a flat here and there's supposed to be a little V shape there. So one of these should have a point on it and it doesn't, but there is one that's a little bit pointier than the other. So the one that's a tiny bit pointier than the other is going to go here, and the other one's going to go here. So I just have to remember where those go. I was wondering if I got the screws all the way out, but they were completely all the way out because they go through a lot of metal to get to that shaft. Okay, I'm trying to make this flat as vertical as possible so it'll be easy for me to align it, because once I put this on I can't tell where the shaft is. So we're just going to give this a try without doing any sort of cleaning up. at this point. Oh yeah. Just marking where that shaft is so that I will make sure that I've got my vertical side vertical where it needs to be. Alright, we're going to see if this will go on. It may need some persuasion. It's gonna need some persuasion. It should be easier to go on than it is to come off, though. We're just gonna give ourselves a little bit of help. Alright, this should be right on that flat. So as we tighten down, we want to wiggle it so it finds that flat center. Okay. That's problem number 1 fixed. We got the hand wheel put on the right way. And that only took like forever. Okay, so we are going to move on to problem number 2. Now we are going to have to align our stitch length to our actual stitch length, so we'll get there. Alright, so now we got it on the widest stitch length because that feed dog is making a huge movements, so we want to adjust this. So as I'm pushing on here, we should be the widest number. So 5 is the widest. We'll put it there for now, and then if I adjust it to the narrowest, this should be almost a 0. Alright, we're going to stay there, and then we'll do fine adjustments later. Alright, so I've got a little tiny screw here. We're going to see if this works for that needle, for this little thread guide, needle thread guide. Alright, we got a needle in there. That's problem number 2 fixed, so that needle thread guide is fixed. Now we're going to be looking at timing. Now, let's see what our book tells us to do. Sewing hook tip should be set as closely as possible to the needle. To adjust the distance between the blade point of the sewing hook and the needle, first rotate the hand wheel until they coincide with each other. Then you loosen 2 screws, so this is on figure 20. So underneath screws 1 and 2, 1 and 3. And that'll move this whole hook assembly left to right. Alright, let's try and do that so we can get closer. And I'll try and show you what we're looking at here. So that hook needs to just barely almost touch the needle, and we've got a lot of space in between there, so we need to move the hook. And this is a fresh needle, so it's straight. So we're trying to close that gap right there. It's like 0 to 0.1 millimeters, I believe, is the spec on that. It's close. Way close. Yeah, correct me in the comments, because I know that spec I just made up is wrong. But it's close. It's got to be very close to that. I just don't remember the exact. This screw, and then this whole assembly right here is going to move for us. we're trying to catch this from a couple different angles here. So right in there, right inside there is where your needle is. Can you see that? So right inside there is where your needle is. And I want this to move this way to get closer to that needle. So I just need it to move a little bit. Here. Just a little. Okay, sir. That is very close. We're going to go a little bit more. That was much better. Alright, I'm happy with that. So we're going to tighten down a little bit there. A little bit there. Test. Tighten. Tighten. Test. Alright, that's much better. Now we're getting to the point where we're doing the needle to hook timing. So I want to set my stitch length to about an 8, which should be okay. We are looking for 3 32nds of an inch of rise. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to put the needle in the lowest position, and then I'm going to raise it up 3 32nds of an inch. And at 3 32nds of an inch, the tip of the hook, I've just raised that needle 3 32nds of an inch. And if you can tell, that hook is right there at the needle. So the timing on this machine was actually perfect. We just had to adjust a few other things. Alright, let's keep going. And when I say timing, I mean this particular type of timing. The hook to the needle timing. Now the other thing I have to look at while I'm at this position, so I haven't moved it yet, is that the eye of the hook has to be a 1/16 of an inch or 1.6 millimeters below the hook. So the eye of the needle should be 1.6 millimeters below the hook, and it's actually kind of low. So that means I need to raise the needle bar just slightly. So we are going to raise the needle bar just slightly. And there's our screw right there. So we have raised that needle bar just a little bit. Alright, now we're coming to the point where we're in our adjustment manual. We're talking about height of the feed dog. We know this feed dog is way too high. Way too high. It's sticking way up out of there. So we need to lower that down. This screw right here is our adjustment for the feed dog height. So we're going to adjust that one, or loosen that one, and then adjust. So these feed dogs are not the same as a regular domestic sewing machine. These feed dogs actually come up about flush with the plate at their highest position. Can I even adjust that anymore? Yeah. Maybe I don't need that washer on there. Maybe that washer was ruining my day. I'm trying to adjust the wrong part. I think these are the feed dogs that should be in this machine. So these right here, I think this is the feed dog that should be in this machine. Let's take the other ones out and compare. All right, you see the difference there in height. These were sticking out way too high for me to use. So I think that these are the ones that should be in this machine right here. So they have the same footprint, just one is lower than the other. Alright, we'll get that in there and see how we do. You want it just flush or just slightly proud of the surface. I like that. So we're on these machines, every time you tighten a screw, you better tighten it. Because you don't know how many, this thing goes thousands of stitches a minute. You don't know how many years it's going to be before somebody else touches it, so you want to make sure everything's nice and tight. Alright, now we're going to assemble the now we're going to assemble the presser feet. On a walking foot machine, the needle actually goes through the walking foot. So I'm putting this foot all the way up until it hits a little flange up there, and then we're going to tighten it down and try not to stab myself in the process. So here's what a walking foot should look like, because the timing actually looks pretty good here. So the needle comes down, so we're clamping down on the fabric, needle's going into the fabric, and now you see the back foot coming straight up while the walking foot is moving back with the needle, and it comes around and picks up another piece of fabric there, and the fabric moves while the needle is down in the fabric, which is the opposite of what you want for a regular home sewing machine, but for this it works great. Needle feed, triple feed, I don't know, there's all kinds of different names. I call it walking foot because I like how it looks like it's just taking a walk. Now we're going to check our stitch length. Alright, let's see what we are set for now. So we are set at, let's see, 8. So we're set at 8 stitches per inch, and we're going to measure that and see how far off we are from that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 10. Alright, we got 10 for good measure. Let's see where we're at. So we made 10 holes. We're counting the 8th hole, so the first one is 0, right? So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we have 8 stitches in 1.175 inches. So all we're adjusting right now is this ring over here. And so we are less than 8 stitches per inch. So I need to loosen this guy. We are less than 8. And so now I want to adjust it to where I think 8 should be. And we'll try again. 6, 7, 8. And I'm seeing 1.02 inches, and I'm going to take that. Good with that, and then we're going to leave that. We're going to tighten where we are on this ring. This little arm right here, as we're operating this machine, should be pulling back on the bobbin case there, and it's not touching it. So it should pull it back just enough to pull this off of that indentation. So there's space where the bobbin case can move left and right. And we just want this to tap it. It taps it at just the right moment to let the thread through and not cause the thread to break. So Okay, it's a little too far because when it's, you don't get any movement there further, so yep. That's it. Alright, we're going to tighten it down and call it good. Now we're at the point where we need to stick this into our table and see how it runs. The tension is kind of an unknown right now because someone else replaced that. But as far as everything else goes, we are looking pretty good. We're ready to give this a little try. We're over here in the industrial corner. We're going to see how the machine does. We've got it all threaded up. And we're going to go nice and slow, make a few stitches, and see what happens. We're leaving it on the 8 stitches per inch. Alright, we have no tension on our bobbin, so it's pulling our thread up, making loops on top. That's not the way that's supposed to work. Alright, we're going to pull out the bobbin, which means I've got to pull out these little tiny screws, and hopefully I don't lose any of them. The bobbin case is what I meant. Can you see all that nastiness in there? So that was underneath the spring that's supposed to tension our thread here on the bobbin case. Now before I finish everything I'm doing before and don't show you anything, see that tiny little screw right there? Look at my fingernail compared to that screw. That is tiny. And then the ones for the tension were even smaller than that. So that screw goes in this hole right here. And then you've got these two little tension screws that I had to pull out to pull off that tension spring, which is just a flat piece of metal. And so I'm putting all these screws back in. That one's in, but it's not tight. And then I'm going to get this one in and not tight, and then I'll tighten them both. While you're watching me work and not really say a whole lot, these industrial machines, a lot of times people will find them on Facebook Marketplace or some online, they'll find them locally and they'll be real cheap. And sometimes there's a reason why they're cheap. A lot of places, these machines get sold because they were sitting in the back of their shop because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. And then after a certain amount of time, they just say, okay, let's just get rid of that, because they've purchased new machines. So yeah, maybe there's nothing wrong with it, or maybe it's an easy fix, or maybe there's something really wrong with it and it's not an easy fix. But this is one of those instances where this person bought this machine not knowing the history of the machine. So this has obvious signs that it was fiddled with a lot and just probably didn't work for them very well, and they just needed a mechanic to come out and fix it. But there aren't too many mechanics around. In fact, I don't go to customers anymore for industrial machines. It's not something I enjoy doing, so I just stopped doing it. There is a need. There's a huge need. So if you learn how to fix these machines, you could have a job, and you could probably, in some places like the Charleston area where I'm at, you could probably name your price and they'd have to pay it because there's nobody that does it. All right, round 2. Let's see how we're doing. We are better. I'd say we're a little too tight on the top thread still, so we can loosen that up. How much room do I have to loosen up here? So we may need a new spring on our bobbin case there, because this is as tight as we got and it's still kind of loose down there. Alright, make sure you're watching your thread. So if your thread comes undone from the upper tension, you end up with a big mess on the bottom. So we're going to try this again. Haha, that's looking much better. That's looking much better. You see little, barely any red dots there, and then you see black dots down there. So we are good and even on our stitch tensions. I had to take the little spring that goes around the bobbin case, and I took it off completely again, and then gave it a little bend. You have to be careful because you can easily break those. But you have nothing to lose, so you can give it a try once, and if you break it, you're putting a new one on anyway. You can buy those springs. So I just bent that one a little bit. It gave me more tension on that bobbin, and there's more room to go if we need to tighten it up. But this machine is now working very nicely. So you didn't see that I oiled the machine, and I cleaned it a little bit. So with industrials cleaning, you don't want to get too involved in the cleaning of these machines. You want to get all the dust and everything out of there. But if you try to make it sparkle and shine, you end up removing some of that protective some of the protective layer on the outside of that machine, because these are meant to work all day long and just work. So you want them to just work. So let me get my notes here. So on this machine, we had to fix the needle guide screw. We had to fix the hand wheel stitch length. We had to remove the entire hand wheel, flip that thing around, and then get it adjusted to exactly where it should be. We had to adjust the needle to hook clearance, so the hook was too far away from the needle. We had to move that hook in. Then we had to adjust our needle bar height. The needle bar was a little bit too low, so we raised it up a little bit. The timing was perfect, except for that needle bar height, but the timing of the hook to the needle bar to the needle was perfect. We did replace the feed dogs, so they had some feed dogs in there that they had purchased that were too tall, so we got the ones that are the right size for this machine. And then we had to, once we got those, then we had to adjust the height to make sure that they were good. Then we did the bobbin case tension. So we did a lot of adjustments on this machine, and hopefully that helped you. There are a few adjustments we didn't have to do, so we didn't have to do too much with that hook timing. We also didn't have to do too much with the feed. So the feed was actually the timing of the feed and the position of the position of the presser foot that does the feeding. That middle one was actually good. It moved at the same time as those feed dogs did. They met at the right time, push, and then separate at the right time. So those worked great. Another thing that we didn't have to do was our forward to reverse balance, and that's a really tough thing to do on these machines. So if you have to deal with that, that's something it's even hard to find the manual that shows you how to do that. But this machine is ready to sew another day, and it's, there's a couple of machines just like it, different names, but exactly the same machine. And hopefully this video helped you out. All right, thanks for watching. In this video, we're working on a Consew industrial machine, and this thing needs a whole lot of adjustments to get into time,